I've been thinking about how looking successful never felt like a decision I made. It felt more like upkeep, like something you're supposed to maintain once you hit a certain age. I remember standing in front of my closet before a meeting, staring at clothes that were technically fine and still feeling like they weren't saying the right thing. So I bought a new pair of shoes. Not expensive, just nicer than the old ones. It didn't feel reckless. It felt responsible, like I was preventing a problem before it happened. That's kind of how it always shows up. Not as ambition, more like avoidance. Avoiding the feeling of being slightly behind, slightly off, slightly judged. I didn't think of it as spending money to impress anyone. I thought of it as spending money to stay invisible. And that part didn't bother me at first. What bothers me now is realizing how often I paid for relief instead of anything I actually wanted. Work is where this really locked in for me. Not flashy stuff, just acceptable. Haircuts a little more often than necessary. Shirts that cost more because cheaper ones felt risky. Shoes replaced before they were actually worn out. None of it felt like lifestyle creep. It felt like professionalism. I told myself it was part of being taken seriously, an investment. That word does a lot of work. I didn't track any of it. I didn't want to. A $90 haircut every month instead of every other month doesn't sound like much when you're busy. Until you do the math out loud and realize that's an extra $500 a year just to feel safe in a conference room. And that's when the discomfort starts to creep in, because the money didn't make me confident. It just quieted a fear. And once I noticed that, I kind of wished I hadn't. Cars were another one of those things that pretended to be practical. I didn't buy anything fancy. I just upgraded earlier than I needed to. The old car still ran fine, nothing wrong with it. But it started to feel like it said something about me that I didn't like I was paused, like I hadn't quite arrived yet. So I added about $220 a month to my life. That's how I framed it. Added, not spent. It felt manageable, barely noticeable once it blended into everything else. Until one night I multiplied it out and realized that was close to $3,000 a year, just for the payment, before insurance, before gas. And I remember sitting there thinking, what exactly is this protecting me from? The car didn't make my days better. It just made parking lots less stressful. And that realization stuck with me longer than the new car smell ever did. Phones are sneaky because they don't feel like status symbols. They feel like tools. I wasn't chasing the newest model. I just didn't want to fall too far behind. The battery excuse, the camera excuse, this one's slowing down excuse, all technically true, and the monthly upgrade plan made it feel harmless. $40 here, $35 there. It didn't even register as spending. But over 3 years, that's more than $1,000 for something I stopped noticing after a week. What I did notice was the absence of little moments of embarrassment. No lag, no cracked screen, no jokes. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't paying for convenience. I was paying to avoid feeling outdated in tiny, invisible ways. I didn't hate the phone. I just realized it wasn't really for me. It was for everyone else I imagined looking at it. Eating out was where I blended in the most. Lunch near work, dinners with friends, casual drinks. I noticed I almost never ordered the cheapest thing, even when I wanted it. $6 more for a different option didn't feel like a decision. It felt like the cost of not standing out. Menus are quiet social tests. Nobody says it, but you feel it. And over time, that $6 difference shows up a lot. If you do that 3 times a week, that's almost $1,000 a year. For food you don't even remember. That part bothered me. Not the money exactly, the fact that I wasn't choosing based on hunger or taste. I was choosing based on comfort, social comfort. And none of those meals felt special. They just felt safe. Subscriptions were easier to ignore because they felt aspirational. Gym membership, a couple streaming services, a productivity app I swore I'd use more once things slowed down. Each one was a small vote for a better version of me. Or at least that's how I framed it. Canceling felt heavier than paying. Like admitting something quietly failed. So I kept paying month after month, supporting routines I didn't have time for. When I finally added them up, It wasn't shocking. It was disappointing because the money wasn't wasted on fun. It was spent on intentions. That's when I started to notice how often I paid for who I hoped I'd be instead of who I actually was at the end of most days. Home upgrades felt earned, better couch, nicer lighting, furniture that made the place feel put together. I told myself it was about comfort, and some of it was, but a lot of it was about how the space looked when people came over. I financed a couch once. It sounded ridiculous when I said it out loud later. At the time, it made sense monthly. What I didn't notice was how long I kept paying for it after it stopped feeling new, after it became background. Comfort slowly turned into obligation, and I realized how easy it was to confuse the two when the payments were quiet and spread out. Trips were supposed to be different. Vacations were framed as self-care, reasonable splurges, something you should do while you can. And I believed that. I stretched budgets, told myself the memories were worth it. Sometimes they were. A lot of times, I came back tired, financially tighter, already stressed about catching up. The photos looked better than the experience felt. When I looked back, the cost didn't match the relief I expected, and that gap stayed with me. The part I didn't want to admit was that sometimes staying home would have felt better. It just didn't look as good. Credit cards made all of this smoother. Minimum payments created this soft illusion of control. Nothing felt urgent. Nothing felt broken. Just slightly delayed. I avoided checking balances during busy stretches. Not intentionally, just later. Always later. When I finally added up the interest I'd paid over the years just to keep everything looking normal, it made my stomach drop. That money didn't buy things. It bought time. And I wasn't sure I'd use that time well. Gifts were another quiet pressure. Weddings, birthdays, group collections at work. Nobody wanted to be the cheap one. I definitely didn't. So I spent more than I meant to. Told myself it was generosity. And part of it was. But part of it was fear. Fear of being noticed in the wrong way. What stuck with me later was realizing no one remembered the amounts. They remembered that I showed up, which made me wonder why I thought the numbers mattered so much in the moment. Scrolling changed my spending tolerance without me noticing. I wasn't jealous exactly. I just started seeing certain things as normal. Weekend trips, new kitchens, upgraded everything. It quietly raised the floor, and once the floor rises, your money disappears faster. I didn't feel envy. I felt restlessness, like I was slightly behind a pace no one officially set. It took a while to realize how much desire came from exposure, not need. And that was uncomfortable in a way I didn't know how to fix right away. Convenient spending was the easiest to justify. Delivery fees, rush charges, paying extra to avoid thinking when you're tired. Money feels like a tool for relief. $10 here, $15 there. It felt humane until I added it up and realized how much I'd paid just to skip small moments of friction. That's when I noticed how often I used money to smooth my own exhaustion instead of actually resting. Upgrading everyday things felt harmless. Better coffee, nicer groceries, premium versions of normal stuff. I told myself it was about quality. Most of the time, the excitement faded fast. The coffee became normal. The groceries blended in. The upgrades stopped being special. I didn't regret buying better things. I regretted expecting them to feel like progress. Going out was expensive because presents cost money. Drinks, tickets, rides. I said yes even when I was tired, even when I didn't really want to go. Staying in felt like opting out, and opting out felt risky, like falling behind socially. Looking back, a lot of those nights blurred together. The cost didn't. That part stayed sharp. There was always this quiet timeline in my head where I thought I should be by now, what my life should look like, what success was supposed to resemble at this age. That timeline drove more spending than I like to admit. And I didn't question it because questioning it felt like failure. Once I noticed that, the shame came first, then the clarity, and neither of them solved anything right away. Raises didn't bring relief. They just expanded the expectations. Better apartment, nicer routines, slightly higher baseline. The extra money disappeared into looking like I was moving forward, and I couldn't tell if I actually was. That confusion was heavier than being broke ever was. I didn't talk about money with friends. None of us really did. Everyone assumed everyone else was fine. That silence kept the pressure alive. Because if everyone else was fine, then the problem had to be me. It turns out a lot of us were pretending at the same time. There were moments I almost saw the pattern, almost paused, almost asked harder questions, and then I didn't. This is the part I didn't want to look at first. How often I chose comfort over clarity. That avoidance cost more than any single purchase ever did. I realized at some point that I never clearly defined what success meant for me. I just chased the outline of it. Vague goals cost real money, and they don't tell you when to stop. That realization didn't fix anything. It just made things quieter in a different way. Sometimes it's just me, late at night, staring at my bank app, not panicked, not shocked, just tired. Looking successful took a steady toll. Monthly, yearly, slowly. I don't have a clean ending for that. I just see it now. And sometimes that's as far as the thought goes.